Hello and welcome to Sam's Fans Live, both on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching, let us know in the comments by saying hi. Otherwise, we don't know if you're watching. And today, I'm very excited to continue with our series, The Power of Stories. This is a series of live streamed interviews in which I am chatting with therapists from the partner institutions that Sam's Fans supports. Particularly, we are talking about their stories and the stories that have influenced and impacted them. Joining me today is music therapist Jennifer Walker. Jennifer joined the Family and Child Life Services team at University Hospital's Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital in 2013, having gained previous experience in pediatrics, pediatric rehab, schools, and community settings. She became a board-certified music therapist in 2004 after completing her undergraduate education at Baldwin Wallace College. In 2012, Jennifer completed her master's degree in music therapy at St. Mary of the Woods College, which included conducting research on the role of music therapy in increasing comfort for pediatric epilepsy patients. She divides her time at Rainbow between seeing patients and families, primarily in the NICU, Oncology, Pulmonology, and Neurology units, and running the National Roster Internship Program. So without further ado, let me bring Jennifer into the stream. Let me hide this. Hey, hello, Jennifer. How are you?
Hello, I am great. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to have you with us. Thank you
Yes,
for joining us.
thank you so much for having us. It's fun to be the new kids in the club.
Yeah, yeah. It's for those of you watching, University Hospitals is the latest hospital that we've partnered with in Ohio, and we're very happy to be working with you. And I'm very happy to be chatting with you and getting
Yeah,
to know you a little bit better.
finally.
Yeah. So last week we tried something, and I think we're gonna try it again, in which we're gonna start with the story. So for those of you watching, you can start with this powerful story, and then we'll chat about it. We'll get to know Jennifer a little bit better. And again, if you're watching, we would love to know you're there. So let us know in the comments. Just say hi, drop an emoji, and we'll love to say hi back to you. Are you okay with starting with the story, Jennifer?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, so I'll come off the stream and let you take it away. Is that okay?
Sounds
All
good.
right.
All right. So today I am going to be sharing a story inspired by several patients and their experiences, sort of kind of an amalgamation of a few patients. We'll call our protagonist today Emmy. Emmy was 5 years old when she was first diagnosed with osteosarcoma. During their first extended hospitalization, Emmy and her parents spent a lot of time in their room. Emmy found it too painful to walk, even to the playroom, even though it was just next door. I first met them after they'd been admitted for a few days. Emmy and her dad were sitting quietly in a darkened room. They initially seemed a little bit hesitant to engage with me. They were a very self-sufficient family and didn't really always weren't quite to the point where they were really interested in lots of different services yet, but they accepted the offered session. Emmy quickly warmed as I started playing her favorite Christmas songs, even though it was July. And by the end of our session, she was playing keyboard and singing along. Emmy's dad said it was the first time, with tears in his eyes, that he'd seen her smile in a week. I worked with Emmy regularly through her treatment course alongside our child life and art therapy teams. Her unbreakable spirit and resilience inspired us all. She wrote songs that any 5-year-old might have written about hot dogs and french fries, or about how much she loved her family, how much about pretending to be her favorite Disney princesses, which obviously was Elsa. She wrote songs that 5-year-olds shouldn't have to write, about what she missed about being home when she was in the hospital, and about what she wanted to do when she beat cancer. Her sense of humor and her family's sense of humor was always almost always on display, and fit right into the medical environment. When she found out that her foot was going to be amputated, she decided she wanted to throw it a goodbye party, complete with a foot casting done with art therapy. In short, she took it in stride, like she did everything. I remember a session shortly after she got her new prosthesis. She wanted to show off her dance moves to everyone on the floor. And this huge spirit in this tiny little 6-year-old body, she was 6 by then, put on her new leg by herself, and then asked me to play some dance music so that she could just dance around the unit and get her groove on. Everybody was just cheering her on, and she sort of brought everyone up with her because she was always so excited about life. And so it went with Emmy and her family. She finished treatment, she celebrated, and all was well. Until it wasn't. She relapsed a couple of years later with disease detected in her lung. It was small and it was early, so she had a successful surgery to remove the mass. When I first saw her after surgery, she was tired and in pain, but also eager to make music. We were in the moment together, improvising some new verses to some of her favorite songs. She was bossing everybody around as usual. When physical therapy arrived to get her up into her chair, she was terrified because she knew it was going to be so painful and so hard, and she begged not to. But her dad held her hand and reminded her that she could do hard things and that she was strong and he was strong with her. I began to play a song that had become meaningful to her and her parents during their first admission, their first course, that they identified as being about finding strength in faith when you can't find it in yourself. Emmy looked at me, she nodded, and she started working with the PT. She sat in her chair for the rest of our session and noted that the music made the pain tolerable. Didn't make it go away, but she could handle it. During this brief admission, which was thankfully quite brief, Emmy also rewrote some favorite songs to mirror her own experiences with cancer as something that she defeated once and would defeat again. And she did. She was cancer-free. When she came to clinic for follow-ups, she shared silly YouTube videos with me. I will never be able to eat tacos again without thinking of her and that song, It's Raining Tacos. And she asked me to bring a new weird instrument every time I saw her. Her favorite was the vibroslap. She assigned instruments to everyone in the family every time they were there and had everyone play in our group improvisations, of which she was definitely the leader. All was well for about a year. Sadly, Emmy did not stay cancer-free. She relapsed again, this time with disease in more areas. The team went through several different treatment options, none of which were working. She had some pain and some difficulty breathing, but mostly she endorsed feeling well. Mostly, though, one day she said she felt tired. We continued our sessions when she was here, which some days were energetic expressions of weird instruments or writing elaborate and fantastical song stories. Other days were just some quiet guitar while she held the ocean disc and just very gently rocked back and forth. Her family continued to express appreciation for the space to just be together. We discussed heartbeat recording as an option, which Emmy and her parents were really excited about. Emmy wanted just her heartbeat and no one else's, except maybe the dog. I was like, I don't know if we can do that, but if the opportunity arises, we can record the dog. We then paired her heartbeat with a few favorite songs. When I first played the recordings for the family at the next visit, Emily smiled and said, "That's just right." I saw Mom in tears in the corner, who nodded in agreement. That was the last time I got to see Emmy. The hospice team provided care in their home, and any visits with their caregivers here became virtual when COVID changed everything. When I last spoke with Emmy's mother, she mentioned that she wasn't sure if she'd ever be able to listen to the recording of Emmy's heartbeat again. She worried out loud that it had been a waste, or silly to do if she's not even going to listen to it again. But I had the chance to tell her that she never has to listen to it. That was never the point. We didn't do the recording so she could listen to it every day, even though some families might do that. But she has the option. And that just the memory of the moment where Emmy got to share this beautiful thing, her heart music, with her family might be the point after all. Just that one shining moment. Whether just in memory or in listening to the recording, though, Emmy's heart music is still beating, just as her unbreakable spirit will inspire those of us that will know her forever. And that is the end of my story.
I'm bringing Jennifer back. There it is. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah. What was important for you in writing this story?
For me, I think noting that, like, one of the things that I learned from patients and families again and again and again is just how resilient they are, and how even though when they get knocked down, they keep coming back. And like, that is the patients that I had in mind when I was writing this story are some of the most resilient people I've ever met. And so I really wanted to get that in there, that, you know, we as music and art therapists and other healthcare providers are here to support patients and families, but they're the ones that are doing the hard work. And it's just our job to witness and support them through that. And it's a great privilege and an honor to do that.
Yeah, and you talked about so many ways in which you support what the families are already doing, right? So how will you talk about resilience in terms of your sessions with music therapy and families and kids like Emily? How are you sort of fostering and encouraging that sense of resilience?
Really just highlighting the things that they already have inside them. So like, if I am meeting a new child and they're having a really hard time that day, just reminding them that that's okay, that this isn't anybody's idea of a good time. Nobody's favorite place is the hospital. And that finding little small things that can make that day a little bit better can mean so much, and that they can do that their own. They don't have to wait for somebody to bring it to them, but I'm here to bring it to them if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes absolutely sense.
Okay.
I think at this point we can just say hi to a couple of people who are watching. Julia, who's been watching, I think, a lot of the streams. So hi, Julia. And
Hi.
Also Patty, who's Nikki's mom. Hi, Patty. Good to have you here as always. And Ruby Chen.
Oh my God,
Like
Ruby.
your story. Yeah, if you're watching, let us know. We would love to say hi to you. This is all about connection. If it was just about the video, we would record it otherwise. So we're here live to hear from you and hear your stories and comments from people watching. So, but I do have some other questions and comments, you know, based on what you were telling us with your story. So at some point you talked about music making pain more tolerable, and I know, and you know, that there's research. I think that I think there might be a Cochrane review on pain and music. So what can you tell us about that, the influence of music in pain management, in pain tolerance, as far as research, but also from your personal experience at the hospital?
Well, I feel from my personal experience, at least, some of it is just that when whatever we're feeling in our bodies, it's really hard to detach from that when it's an unpleasant thing, right? We tend to be separated from our embodied experience a lot, except when it's bad. So sometimes just having having an external cue to focus on things that feel good can be huge. And sometimes having that external cue to focus on can be all we need. I think knowing how like music perception can sort of do magical things in our brain, since the science is a little bit beyond me, and you know, science and magic are related in my brain.
Yeah.
So it's really hard sometimes to think about, how am I going to get through this painful experience? And having something to focus on that is enjoyable can just be that tiny little hump that then lets us focus on, oh, okay, this is nice. So I'm going to hook into this nice thing, and I'm going to use my breath to help my body physically relax. And that can also help reduce some of that pain perception. I find like parents and patients are often like, music's going to do what for my pain? And just trying to put it in that, it'll just to frame it as something that can help make pain more manageable, or help change the perception of pain, makes it a little bit easier for patients to grasp. And once they can grasp it, they can do it.
Yeah. Right. And because, pain is like you say, it's a perception, so it's not something objective. So obviously there are many theories of how top-down, bottom-up approaches to pain and how music can influence that. But the science also says, right, that it does decrease pain.
Yeah.
And of course, it is magic, but it is also not magic. It's not like you can say, okay, play this song and suddenly your pain is gonna go away. I think that's also important for people to understand. I actually had an experience.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be great, but we're not quite there yet. But I even, I had an experience, as maybe you've had as well. I was in Colombia doing an internship in the hospital and working with a child, and his pain was all there was at that moment for him. And we, it was the main music therapist there, and I was also there. And sometimes it's just you're trying your best, but it's not magic, right? For this particular child, at that moment, music was simply couldn't get him away from that painful experience. And I don't know if you have any sort of experience where you're there, you're wanting to assist and to help the patient, but their pain is so much, or they're simply not in that disposition to engage with music. I don't know if you can share a little bit about that, and what do you usually do in those moments?
Sure. I am thinking of one situation in particular when we had I want to say he was 6 at the time, but he was receiving infusions in the PICU, and these antibody infusions that caused intense bone pain. And it was his first experience with it, and the pain team hadn't quite ironed out his regimen quite yet. And he was just screaming and writhing in pain. And it was really distressing to everyone on the unit. Like, the entire unit could hear him. Mm-hmm. And the nurse called me in and said, can you please help us? So I did my thing, and I tried a couple different things. I tried sort of just like some tonal vocal holding and trying to match his cries and see if that was helping, and that was not helping. And I tried singing songs that I knew that he knew, or that some of his cries suggested songs to me. So I tried some of those too, and tried doing those a couple different ways, and that wasn't helping him in that moment. But what I noticed is that as I was looking around, the staff was calmer.
Mm-hmm.
So, there were 5 or 6 people in his room trying to get his meds straightened out. And so I thought, okay, this might not be exactly what he needs right now, but this might be exactly what the nurses need right now, and what the other people on the unit need right now. So I'm going to keep trying to find something that's going to hit the sweet spot for him, but I'm not going to give up just because it's not working for him. And so I stayed for about an hour until he eventually fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
He was screaming until that moment. And I felt really upset that he was in so much distress that entire time. But I also, like, the other staff in the room were so appreciative that that somebody was there to try to hold that space for him, and that, they felt like they could focus more on what they needed to do because he was being cared for in a slightly different way, I think. Even if it wasn't quite what he needed in that moment. But they knew that I was there and was trying, and that container was helping for them too.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting perspective. I had not thought about that, where you are also, of course, having an influence on the people in the room, and everybody who's listening to the music as well. Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And of course, it's also about self-compassion and understanding that we're not magic wands, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's easy to feel like, particularly staff in some units, think of us that way when they're like, "Hey, come fix this." Like, I can't fix this, but I can support you all in what we're all doing together. So.
Right. And so you also talked about some other interventions that you used. And well, for people watching who might not be music therapists, I think it helps to hear these individual interventions and how they are applied in different stages of a hospitalization or with different patients. I was having that same experience with an art therapist where we were talking about the different interventions that they use. So I just wanted to mention that I really thought that was important for people to see that it's not somebody coming in and just playing songs for an hour. There can be songwriting, there can be what you said, vocal holding, heartbeat recordings, and just so many interventions. And particularly about songwriting, I wanted to ask, what's your approach to it? Do you how do you work with kids through a songwriting process, and when do you introduce it to them? I don't know if you have some other experiences you would like to share with us just based on songwriting.
Yeah, I think songwriting is one of my favorite things to do with, and I do it with parents too, with kids and with parents, because you can go so many different ways with it. And like the whole point of this series, The Power of Stories, it's like, oh, songwriting, yes, let's get into it. This is powerful. So sometimes we'll start with you asked me how I introduce this, and really depends. So sometimes when I'm first meeting a patient, I'll say, we could make up songs, we could even write stuff down if you want. Or when I'm talking to a parent who has a baby in the NICU, I'll say we could write some lullabies so that you can record your voice for your baby when you have to be away. And we'll start, the approach is really dependent on where that person is. So sometimes we'll start with just piggybacking or song transformation and taking a song and saying, so let's make this song about you. Or let's make this song about something you like, if they don't want it to be that personal yet. And that might be as simple as just changing the names in the song or the locations, if there's a city mentioned, or just writing in a few things that make that song just a little bit truer for that person. Another thing I really like to do is 12-bar blues, because we can, and the way I, excuse me, sometimes present that to kids is, so we're going to write a song and we're going to have 3 lines. The first 2 lines are the same, so you only have to write 2. And we're going to state a problem and then find something like either a solution or a description or an understanding or something about it. So that can be about anything. I've written songs about catch up with kids. Like it's so flexible and so easy to make really cool things out of that people don't think they can do. I would say more people who end up writing songs with me start with, I can't write a song, than say, I can write a song. So it's really fun to have them take the opportunity to then sort of form their own narrative about something.
Yeah, and I was thinking how it can be such a confidence booster, even for kids who are not in the hospital. I mean, writing a song, it's something cool, It's like, oh, I wrote a song. That's cool. I'm cool,
Yeah.
And particularly for kids in the hospital where their confidence could be very affected, right? And they could be very distraught by the whole experience. So having that also affects their state of mind, their emotions, and also their physiology, right? We know that our mind affects our body as well. So that's great. And I also wanted to see if you have anything else to say about heartbeat recordings. We've talked about them in the past. Brian Schreck, who's I think one of the fathers of the heartbeat recording, has been on the show here a couple of times, and he was actually the therapist or one of the therapists who worked with Sam. So do you have anything else you would like to share with us about heartbeat recordings?
Sure. So I know Brian started doing them, and a lot of people use them as legacy project things for children and adults when they're doing it with adults who have terminal illness or who are not expected to survive. So we do that. We when we have if a child is unexpectedly falls ill or there's a trauma or something, we try and do those for those families. With our longer term patients, we try to make it a more collaborative process where the child gets to decide whose heartbeat gets recorded, what the music goes with that. And in those cases, I mean, yes, it's for the family, but it's also for that child, because they get to have that control over those things. They get to decide what their legacy is. But what I've been doing with them more recently is I record parent heartbeats in the NICU, so that, and then I try to get their voices as well. Some of them are quite shy. But then they can leave their heart with their baby when they have to leave, which has been, a lot of parents have really been excited about that, particularly during COVID when visiting is so much harder.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite things to do with it.
That's very interesting. That's a new idea that I didn't know about. So that's really cool. Great. Let's see. I think I had how do people react, or how the kids react when they hear their heartbeats? Do you have any sort of experiences with their reactions?
They're just like, whoa, most of the time. The kids. Parents, when they hear their own, like if it's a NICU mom or dad and they hear her, people like, huh, was not expecting that. Or if a parent hearing, like, babies' heartbeats are fast. So if I'm recording a baby, even if that baby isn't expected to live that long, it usually sounds, it is a club beat, and it is powerful, and everybody starts dancing. Even if it's a generally sad situation, but like everybody starts moving because it's so fast. And it's always like the babies record so strongly on the stethoscope because they don't have enough flesh to dampen that beat, so it comes out really strong, and everybody's always amazed when they hear how strong those babies' heartbeats are.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's a very interesting intervention. I think in the US it's gaining a lot of popularity. Here in Germany, I'm not sure if they use it much yet. When I was in Colombia, they really didn't have the equipment to do that. But it's very interesting, and it can have a lot of it can serve a lot of objectives, and of course, having a music therapist guiding that process and having that therapeutic sensibility to work with the parents and the children, it's very important, and makes it very effective. So great. So I think I want to turn here a little bit and wanted to ask a little bit about your story. So if you don't mind telling us what got you into music therapy, what was that spark that made you want to become a music therapist?
Yeah. I had first heard about music therapy in high school, very briefly. It was kind of oh, this is a thing, and then it was gone. And when I started college, I was a music ed major. It's like, this is cool. I'm going to be a music teacher. And then we got into some of the classes where they started talking about how you decide when to fail a child in your music class. I was like, I'm out. I can't do this for me. So I looked around and was like, oh, music therapy. I heard, that's right. I remember that thing. I'm going to look into this. And I did. And I transferred to Baldwin Wallace at that point. I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, that was kind of like the spark. And then for pretty much my entire undergrad experience, I thought, okay, yeah, I am going to be a music therapist in a school. That's what I'm going to do. And when I got my first job at the Music Settlement, formerly the Cleveland Music School Settlement, one of my assignments was in school, and one of my other assignments was in pediatric rehab. And I was like, oh, I can figure out how to do the rehab. The school, that's my job. That's where I'm going to go. I was like, oh yeah, the school is not where I want to be. This medical setting, that's really cool. And really just started to grow from there, that yes, like pediatric medical music therapy is where I belong. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And here I am.
And the rest is history.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. I hear you. I hear that you wanted to engage with children and music, but you did not want to assign a grade or a quality to their music, right?
Yeah. But I wanted it to be yes, let's be in the music together. Let's just, because this is what we do. This is, I'm gonna relate to you and you're gonna relate to me, and we're gonna have fun together, and we're gonna grow together, and we're gonna learn things. And now there's like, oh yeah, we can like really support each other and do hard things together too.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Do you sometimes teach music to some of the patients, like teach how to play the ukulele, something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. So we'll do ukulele or guitar, keyboard sometimes. I've been doing a little bit less of that recently, just because all of my patients have been under 2. But even some parents have wanted to, like, I would really like to be able to play for her when we get home, kind of thing. So I've been able to coach some parents with, like, these are your chords, let's write a song, you can sing it, and so do some music instruction as well.
Yeah. That's really cool. Well, I'm kind of reaching here the end of my questions. If people, if anybody in the audience who's watching, if you have any questions or comments, as we're near the end, make sure you let us know in the comments. Other than that, I have one sort of interesting question still for you.
Okay.
Also, within this topic of stories. So the question is there any other story, real or fictional, that is not necessarily music or music therapy? So it could be Frozen or it could be whatever, but a story that has had a personal impact or influence in your life?
So it's funny that you mentioned Frozen because it feels really cheesy to say that story has a powerful impact, but it does, right? Because it's the story of someone looking at something about themselves and being ashamed of it, and then realizing that it's actually a wonderful thing, and that they have the capacity, not in spite of that thing, to have a positive impact on other people, but because of that thing, that thing about themselves that they've hidden and feared is actually a really powerful drive for good, force for good. And it, like, even in the sequel, it continues.
Mm-hmm.
So just that, and that we're never done growing either, right? That there's always, she says, I've had my adventure, I don't need something new. But then this great new thing is there.
Mm-hmm.
Frozen has taken over my life, as it has for many of us.
Yeah.
But it's a really powerful story. So.
Do you ever talk to any of your patients in this way, like what the metaphor means in the story?
Yeah, with when they're there, yes, definitely. Just like, what do you think happens to someone when, how do we get from the beginning of the story to the end of the story? Is it the end of the story? Is there more? There's always more. Even if we don't know what the more is, right? Even if it's not on this plane. And is there anything in you that you think could be a force for good that you can take and find that post-traumatic growth that we're all looking for? So.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why so much of this communication with children is through stories, right? It's a way of understanding and for them to get a hold of these concepts and to grow and to get through it. Yeah.
It's why people have been telling stories since the beginning of time. It's how we show what's important to us and how we teach each other.
Yeah.
How to move forward. So.
Definitely. Well, I've personally really enjoyed and loved hearing the stories that you shared with us, your personal story, but also from some of the kids you've served, and the story at the beginning was really, really wonderful. And I thank you personally for taking the time to write it down, to share with us, to also get a glimpse into your work and the wonderful things you're doing at the hospital.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And thank you, Sam's fans.
Yeah, and thank you to people watching, to all our SAMS fans out there who support our mission, who support our partner hospitals. We couldn't do it without them. So this is your last chance, if you're watching, to say goodbye, to ask any questions. Julia says, thank you for sharing your stories. Other than that, it's really been a pleasure and a joy to be here today.
Yes, it has indeed. Thank you so much.
Great. So I'll see the Facebook and YouTube world again next week at the same time. I'm gonna be talking to Graham Spangler from Flying Horse Farms. So this is a camp that we also support, and they do lots of fun things with arts and music. And this camp is particularly for seriously ill children. So that's gonna be very, very fun to hear the stories that Graham has to share with us. So till next week, and thank you again, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.